They towed my car from my own driveway, claiming I broke their precious rules. The HOA thought they owned my life, every inch of my property, every move I made. But they didn't know I held a secret that could unravel their entire neighborhood. Years of their petty fines, smug letters, and power trips were about to backfire in a way they'd never see coming. I wasn't just fighting for my parking spot. I was about to turn their world upside down. What happens when one homeowner discovers they hold the key to an HOA's worst nightmare? Stick around to find out. The sun dipped low over Willow Creek, a tidy suburban enclave where every lawn was manicured, every mailbox identical, and every smile polite but fleeting. For Sarah Mitchell, a single mother of two, this neighborhood was supposed to be her fresh start. After years of scraping by in a cramped apartment, she poured her savings into a modest two-story home with a small garden out front, a place to rebuild her life. Sarah wasn't flashy. She drove a beat-up sedan, worked long hours as a nurse, and spent weekends planting tulips with her kids, their laughter echoing down the quiet street. The neighbors seemed friendly enough, waving as they power washed their driveways or jogged past in matching athletic wear. Willow Creek wasn't just a neighborhood. It was a machine, governed by the iron grip of the Homeowners Association. The HOA's rulebook, thicker than a phone directory, dictated everything: fence heights, paint colors, even the exact shade of mulch allowed in flower beds. Sarah didn't mind at first. She followed the rules, paid her dues, and kept her head down. Her home was her sanctuary, a place where she could finally exhale. But she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The HOA president, Karen Whitmore, patrolled the streets like a hawk, her clipboard always at the ready, her eyes scanning for infractions. Sarah noticed Karen lingering near her driveway one evening, jotting notes with a tight-lipped smile. It started small, a notice about her car parked an inch too far from the curb. Sarah adjusted, chalking it up to the neighborhood's quirks. But the letters kept coming, each one sharper, nitpicking her trash cans, her kids' chalk drawings, even the way her garden hose coiled. Sarah sensed something brewing, a shadow creeping over her quiet life. She didn't know it yet, but her little slice of suburbia was about to become a battleground, and she was standing on ground that held secrets the HOA never saw coming. The first real blow landed on a crisp October morning. Sarah opened her mailbox to find a neon yellow notice from the Willow Creek HOA, its bold letters screaming violation. Her car, parked in her own driveway, was apparently obstructing the aesthetic harmony of the community because it extended half an inch beyond the designated parking line. The fine was $75, due in 7 days. Sarah stared at the paper, her stomach twisting. She'd parked the same way for months without issue. She measured the driveway. Her sedan was well within the lines. Puzzled, she paid the fine to avoid trouble, but the unease settled in like a stubborn fog. Days later, another notice arrived. This time, the HOA claimed her garden hose was improperly stored, coiled in a way that disrupted the neighborhood's uniformity. Another $50 fine. Sarah's patience frayed. She'd spent hours arranging her small garden to meet the HOA's exacting standards, even buying the approved shade of green for her hose. She emailed Karen Whitmore, asking for clarification. The response was curt: rules are non-negotiable. Compliance is mandatory. Sarah felt a prickle of anger but complied, tucking the hose into a neat spiral. She couldn't afford a fight, not with her kids' school fees looming. But the notices kept coming, each one more absurd. Her kids' chalk drawings on the driveway were defacing community property. Her porch light was too dim for safety standards. The fines piled up: $25, $100, $60, draining her savings. Sarah started parking her car a block away to avoid scrutiny, trudging home with groceries under the watchful eyes of neighbors. She noticed Karen's car circling her street more often, its slow crawl feeling like a predator stalking prey. Whispers spread at the neighborhood's monthly meeting, which Sarah avoided after hearing Karen call her non-compliant in a hushed tone. The community she'd hoped would embrace her now felt like a trap. Sarah's frustration grew, but so did her determination. She started documenting everything: every notice, every fine, every interaction. She noticed patterns. Other homeowners, especially new ones like her, were targeted with similar petty violations. A young couple down the street was fined for a non-approved mailbox. An elderly man was cited for a single weed in his lawn. Meanwhile, Karen's house, with its pristine hedges and gleaming windows, never received a single notice. Sarah's suspicions deepened. Was this personal? Or was the HOA flexing its power to keep everyone in line? One evening, while sorting through old property documents to distract herself, Sarah stumbled across something odd, a faded surveyor's map tucked in a folder from her home as closing. It showed her property line extending far beyond her driveway, into the street itself. Her heart raced. The road, the very one the HOA claimed she was violating by parking on, was partly hers. She dug deeper, pulling out deeds and county records late into the night. The discovery was staggering. Her lot included a strip of land on which the neighborhood's South Main Road was built, a detail buried in decades-old paperwork. The HOA had no idea. Armed with this knowledge, Sarah felt a spark of hope, but she kept it quiet, knowing she needed more than a map to fight back. The HOA's harassment escalated. A new rule appeared overnight. All driveways must be repaved with a specific type of asphalt, costing thousands. Sarah received a letter demanding compliance within 30 days or face a lien on her home. Her blood boiled. She couldn't afford the repaving, and the HOA knew it. At a tense community meeting, Karen stood at the podium, her voice dripping with authority as she outlined the benefits of the new rule. Sarah sat in the back, her hands clenched, watching neighbors nod obediently. She wanted to stand up and scream, but she held back. She wasn't ready yet. The final straw came when Sarah's car was towed from her driveway without warning. She came home from a 12-hour shift to find it gone, her kids waiting on the porch, confused. A tow company receipt, stapled to another HOA notice, demanded $300 to retrieve her car. The violation? Her sedan was parked improperly again, though it was fully within her driveway. Sarah's vision blurred with rage and exhaustion. She paid to get her car back, but the humiliation burned. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains as she drove home, the tow truck's taillights fading into the dusk. Sarah's resolve hardened. She spent nights researching property law, poring over county records, and consulting a friend who worked in real estate. The surveyor's map wasn't a fluke. Her property deed confirmed she owned a critical strip of the road, a remnant from when Willow Creek was developed decades ago. The HOA had built its precious street on land she legally controlled, assuming no one would notice. Sarah realized she held a grenade, but pulling the pin would mean war. The HOA wasn't just harassing her, they were overstepping on her rights. But how could she prove it without tipping them off? As weeks passed, the HOA tightened its grip. Karen sent a certified letter threatening legal action if Sarah didn't comply with the repaving rule. The fines now totaled over $1,500, and Sarah's savings were nearly gone. She started noticing neighbors avoiding her, their waves replaced by sidelong glances. One night, she overheard Karen at a local coffee shop, laughing with another board member about teaching troublemakers a lesson. Sarah's name wasn't mentioned, but the implication was clear. The HOA wasn't just enforcing rules, they were targeting her, trying to break her spirit. Sarah's breaking point came on a rainy afternoon. She found a new notice nailed to her door. Her kids' small treehouse, built in the backyard for their birthdays, was unapproved and slated for demolition. The letter gave her 48 hours to tear it down or face a $2,000 fine. Sarah stood in the rain, staring at the treehouse, her kids' laughter from happier days echoing in her mind. She wasn't just fighting for her home anymore. She was fighting for her family's dignity. The storm that had been brewing in Willow Creek finally broke on a sweltering summer afternoon, the kind where the air hung heavy with unspoken resentments. Sarah had reached her limit. The HOA's latest demand, a $5,000 special assessment for community beautification that suspiciously aligned with Karen Whitmore's plans for a new clubhouse, pushed her over the edge. With her savings depleted and her home on the brink of a lien, Sarah knew it was time to unleash the secret she'd guarded like a hidden weapon. She scheduled an emergency meeting with the HOA board, citing urgent property concerns. Karen, ever the queen of her domain, agreed, likely expecting another compliant homeowner to beg for mercy. The meeting room in the community center buzzed with the low hum of fluorescent lights, the scent of stale coffee mingling with the tension in the air. Sarah arrived early, her folder of documents clutched tightly, her heart pounding like a war drum. The board members filed in, Karen at the helm, her perfectly coiffed hair and pearl necklace a mask of unassailable authority. They settled into their seats, murmuring about the agenda, oblivious to the bomb Sarah was about to drop. As the clock ticked past the start time, Sarah stood, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. This was it, the moment where helplessness turned to power. She began by laying out the timeline of harassment, the endless fines, the towed car, the threatened demolition of her children's treehouse. The board shifted uncomfortably, but Karen's expression remained smug, her fingers tapping impatiently on the table. Sarah paused, letting the silence build like a gathering thundercloud. Then, with deliberate calm, she slid the faded surveyor's map across the table. "This is my property deed," she said, her words slicing through the room. "And this shows that I own a significant portion of the main road running through Willow Creek. The very road you've been fining me for parking on." Gasps rippled through the board. Karen's face paled, her composure cracking for the first time. Sarah didn't stop there. She produced county records, legal affidavits, and historical plats, each one a brick in the wall of her case. The development of Willow Creek decades ago had overlooked a crucial detail. A strip of land, deeded to her property's original owner, had never been properly transferred to the community. It bisected the neighborhood's primary access road, making the entire street's construction technically unauthorized on private land. The HOA had built its empire on borrowed ground, her ground. The room erupted into chaos. Board members whispered frantically, flipping through the documents with trembling hands. Karen snatched the map, her eyes scanning it wildly, searching for a flaw, a loophole. But there was none. Sarah had consulted lawyers in secret, confirming her ownership was ironclad. The implications hit like a tidal wave. Without her permission, the road was unbuildable, unmaintainable. Every home delivery, every school bus route, every emergency vehicle access depended on that strip of asphalt she controlled. The HOA's rules, their fines, their power plays, they all crumbled under the weight of this revelation. Karen recovered quickly, her voice rising in a shrill defense. She accused Sarah of forgery, of stirring trouble, of being a disruptive force in their perfect community. But Sarah stood firm, her anger transforming into a cold, unyielding resolve. She revealed how she traced the oversight back to the HOA's founding documents, how Karen herself had signed off on expansions without proper surveys. The board's faces turned ashen as Sarah outlined the potential fallout: lawsuits from residents, county interventions, and even the possibility of the road being declared impassable. Visions of barricades, detours, and plummeting property values flashed through their minds. The confrontation peaked when Sarah dropped the ultimate bombshell. "I'm declaring this road unbuildable," she announced, her words echoing like a judge's gavel. "Effective immediately, unless the HOA rescinds all fines against me and halts their harassment." It wasn't a bluff. She'd already filed preliminary notices with the county, setting in motion a process that could grind the neighborhood to a halt. Karen lunged forward, her face twisted in fury, demanding that Sarah retract her claims. The other board members pleaded for calm, but the damage was done. Sarah's secret had exposed the HOA's house of cards, built on assumptions and overlooked details. Emotions ran raw in that room. Sarah felt a surge of vindication, the months of frustration boiling over into triumphant clarity. She thought of her kids, playing innocently in the yard while the HOA plotted against them. The board, once so arrogant, now scrambled like cornered animals. One member broke ranks, admitting they'd known about vague boundary issues but ignored them to push forward with developments. Karen's empire was fracturing before her eyes, her authority slipping away in real time. As the meeting devolved into heated arguments, Sarah stepped back, watching the unraveling. Neighbors who'd been summoned as witnesses began arriving, drawn by the commotion. Whispers spread like wildfire through the community center's halls about the owned road, the unbuildable street, the HOA's impending doom. Karen's attempts to regain control fell flat, her voice drowned out by the growing murmur of discontent. For the first time, Sarah saw cracks in the facade. Residents who'd suffered in silence now voiced their own grievances, emboldened by her stand. The climax crested with a public humiliation that would echo through Willow Creek for years. As Karen stormed out, clutching her clipboard like a shield, Sarah followed, addressing the gathering crowd in the parking lot. She held up the map for all to see, explaining in simple terms how the HOA had overreached, how their rules were built on shaky ground, literally. Gasps turned to murmurs of agreement, then to outright cheers from those tired of the tyranny. Karen, cornered by her own neighbors, faced questions she couldn't answer. Her face flushed red, her pearls suddenly seeming like chains around her neck. In the days following the explosive meeting, Willow Creek hummed with a mix of shock and exhilaration, like a town awakening from a long, enforced slumber. Sarah Mitchell's declaration hung over the neighborhood like a storm cloud that had finally burst, washing away years of accumulated grievances. The HOA board, reeling from the exposure of their oversight, scrambled into emergency sessions behind closed doors. Whispers traveled from house to house about the owned road, the unbuildable street, and how one woman's stand had cracked the facade of their controlled paradise. Sarah, for her part, returned home that evening with a quiet sense of victory, though she knew the fight wasn't fully won. She hugged her kids a little tighter, promising them the treehouse would stay, no matter what. The immediate fallout was swift and decisive. Within 48 hours, Karen Whitmore issued a formal retraction of all fines levied against Sarah, citing administrative errors. The $1,500 plus in penalties vanished from her record, refunded with interest that Sarah hadn't even requested. The threatened lien on her home dissolved like mist in the morning sun. But Sarah pushed further, demanding transparency. Backed by her ironclad documents, she insisted on a full audit of the HOA's records, revealing a pattern of selective enforcement that favored board members and their allies. Neighbors, emboldened by her courage, came forward with their own stories: fines for minor infractions, ignored maintenance requests, and a slush fund disguised as community improvements. The county got involved, prompted by Sarah's filings, launching an investigation that peeled back layers of mismanagement. Karen's reign crumbled under the scrutiny. Resignation letters flooded in from board members who distanced themselves from the scandal, leaving her isolated. At a hastily called town hall, attended by nearly every resident, Karen faced the community she had once dominated. Her attempts to downplay the issue fell flat against the mountain of evidence Sarah had compiled. The vote to remove her as president was unanimous, a wave of hands rising like a collective sigh of relief. Karen slunk away, her clipboard abandoned on the podium, her pearls no longer a symbol of authority but a relic of her downfall. She sold her house months later, moving to a condo in a distant city, where rumors suggested she joined another HOA, though with far less power. For Sarah, the victory tasted sweet but came with its own weight. She didn't just win back her parking spot, she reclaimed her peace. Her driveway became a symbol of defiance, her car parked boldly without fear. The kids' treehouse stood tall, adorned with fresh drawings that no one dared criticize. Financially, the refunds and waived assessments eased her burdens, allowing her to enroll her children in after-school programs she'd long dreamed of affording. But more than money, it was the shift in the neighborhood's atmosphere that healed her. Neighbors who had once avoided her now stopped by with coffee and stories, forming genuine bonds over shared experiences of HOA overreach. Willow Creek began to feel like a community again, not a dictatorship. The long-term consequences rippled far beyond Sarah's front yard. The HOA, under new leadership, a diverse group including Sarah herself as a reluctant board member, rewrote its bylaws. Petty rules were axed. No more fines for hose coils or chalk art. The rulebook slimmed down to essentials, focusing on true community benefits like park maintenance and safety. The special assessment for the clubhouse? Scrapped, replaced by voluntary fundraisers that brought residents together in laughter rather than resentment. Property values, initially wobbling from the scandal's publicity, stabilized and even rose as word spread of the reformed neighborhood. Families moved in, drawn by the story of empowerment, turning Willow Creek into a beacon for those weary of overbearing associations. On a broader scale, Sarah's tale inspired change elsewhere. Local news outlets picked up the story, dubbing it the Road Rebellion. Articles detailed how overlooked deeds could upend suburban power structures, prompting homeowners across the county to dig into their own property records. HOA reform bills gained traction in state legislatures, advocating for mandatory audits and resident protections. Sarah received emails from strangers sharing similar battles, thanking her for showing that one person could dismantle a system of petty tyranny. She even started a small blog, anonymized at first, offering tips on navigating HOA disputes, knowledge she'd gained the hard way. Yet, the impact wasn't without shadows. Some residents mourned the old order, grumbling about the loss of uniformity that had once made Willow Creek prestigious. A few moved out, seeking stricter communities where rules reigned supreme. Sarah faced anonymous notes in her mailbox, echoes of the old resentment, but they were fleeting, drowned out by the support around her. Her children, witnessing her strength, grew more confident, learning early that standing up for what's right could change the world, or at least their corner of it. Sarah's nights, once filled with worry over bills and notices, now held space for dreams, perhaps a vacation or expanding her garden without fear of violation. As months turned to years, Willow Creek transformed into a place where individuality flourished alongside community spirit. Sarah's strip of road, once a secret weapon, became a shared joke, a reminder etched into the neighborhood's lore. The street remained open. Of course, Sarah had never intended to barricade it, only to leverage it for justice. She granted an easement to the HOA, formalized in legal documents that ensured fair governance moving forward. The absurdity of it all, the HOA stealing a parking spot from someone who owned the road, became a cautionary tale whispered at barbecues and block parties. Reflecting on it all, Sarah often sat on her porch at dusk, watching the sun paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. The weight of the battle had left scars, but they were badges of resilience. She realized that power unchecked, even in the mundane form of neighborhood rules, could erode lives bit by bit. Her story wasn't just about a parking spot or a road. It was about reclaiming agency in a world that too often demanded conformity. The long-term echoes were profound: empowered residents, reformed systems, and a ripple of awareness that no one should endure silent suffering under petty despots. In the end, Willow Creek stood as a testament to what happens when one voice rises against injustice. Sarah's journey from victim to victor proved that hidden truths, when unearthed, could topple empires built on sand. And as the neighborhood thrived in its newfound freedom, one couldn't help but wonder, how many more secrets lie buried in our own backyards, waiting to set us free?